It's a nice subject. So I have an apology come to me from Councillor Joni. Anything else? Anything else?
I've not had any apologies, no.
So we've also got a new member, Councillor Nye. So presumably, yeah, he's
I haven't said
circulated everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is everyone happy with the minutes?
Yep.
So for the true record, I can sign them. All in favour?
I can't vote because this is my first Harbour.
Okay.
You taken?
No, because I'm an independent.
You are.
I'm not conservative
Yeah.
anymore.
Oh, right.
I'm a free spirit.
I was.
It's easy. You just go, I'm done.
The 7th, yeah.
Go and sit with my way over there. Yeah, you'll be well. With my daughter telling me off. I'm in a pretty good place.
If she stands for anything, I'm voting for her.
Does anybody have any declarations of interest?
I vote.
And
As a dog.
public question, I can't see any members of the public present, and did we
haven't
has no receipt? Okay, so we'll move swiftly on. So, item 5 is the designated person reports.
Me.
Can I just introduce this?
Yes, please,
Ian
Lord, yeah.
From our new designated person, and a few who previously have had dealings with David, who was our previous, and Ian's been with us for a year or so. And this is the sort of first meeting for him to be able to present his report that he did back in mid-September, wasn't it? He has got some slides. I'm not sure he's throwing it on the screen as well. So.
Well, as Lawrence gets set up, first of all, thank you very much indeed for your time. The agenda for this short briefing, an introduction, and I'll talk about myself and the designated person as the role. We'll talk a little bit about the regulatory context and what changed in 2025 in terms of the guidance and the regulations which your team, are required to work to. Talk a little bit about the activity that I've done within Ventnor and Newport, so you can contextualize it all. I'll talk about the 2025 audit, and then I'll end with an overview on your compliance with the Ports and Marine Facilities Safety Code. So go straight on to the next slide. So that's basically what I've said. So myself, Ian Hugo, born in Africa, schooled in Scotland, and essentially ran away to sea. And quite a long time later, here I am. But in between, I was in the Royal Navy. I served in ships and submarines, commanded a couple of ships, commanded a couple of submarines. And after I left the service, I had a series of harbour master jobs in the UK and abroad, and ended up running some marine service, well, some marine service companies in West Africa and the Middle East. My time in the UK has been back into harbour mastering, a bit of consulting, a bit of this, a bit of that. But I've been a designated person for about 15 or 16 ports over the last few years. So I've got a breadth and depth of UK harbours, not only the municipal ports such as yourselves, but the private ports and all the rest of it. So I understand the wider challenges of the industry, but I also understand to a degree of detail, actually, the sort of pressures that you as a council, as a municipal port, are under as well. I'd just like to talk a little bit about the role of the designated person, which is the next one. Thank you. And the first bullet there is taken exactly from the Ports and Marine Facility Safety Code, where my job is to provide independent insurance directly to you, the duty holders. And it's that an ability to have that eye-to-eye contact, so that you've got confidence in me, I've got confidence in you, and you've got confidence that what I say does actually reflect on what's going on in the harbour. And this is important because you've got to be comfortable with the designated person giving you good news. You've got to be comfortable with the designated person, not necessarily giving you bad news, but in terms of advising and guiding. And that is something that I hold pretty dear, because it's fundamental to my job as being the challenging friend to the Harbour team, but also the conscience on your shoulders. And the way I do my business, and I think most designated people these days do their business in such a way, where audits tend to be a bit binary, because it's a snapshot. You either comply or you don't, because there's a piece of paper missing or there's a person missing or whatever. So I tend to maintain contact with with the harbour masters, with the team within the harbours over the years, such that I can see the whole process working, which delivers not only that instant assurance of the audit, but that what is actually happening is reflected throughout the year. In other words, your compliance with the code is as robust as it can be, and as sustainable as it can be, because an audit can say everything's fine, but 3 days later there's some accident or whatever, and the question's going to be, well, actually, what did you see? Well, the audit was fine, but that's no use. You've got to be comfortable that what's happening in and around the harbour is sustainable, such that if there is an accident, you can be sure, or at least comfortable, that due process has been followed, which protects not only you as councillors, but protects the council and protects the wider public. So that's why I do my business this way, and I'll talk about that a little later on in the presentation. Moving on to the regulatory context, funny enough, John and I have just had a discussion about some of your higher legislation, which dates back to the 1840s and all this sort of good stuff. But that primary legislation was set up in the Victorian ages, and to a lesser great extent, it's still valid in many ways, because it gives capabilities, it gives powers to make things happen. As any harbour master will know, making things happen sometimes can be difficult, but actually the system is there to make things happen. Simples. But with Sea Empress and a couple of other accidents around the coast and the turn of the century, reports. Well, it was actually the Donaldson report triggered off a whole lot of thinking within government, which then created what I would call a modern set of documentation by which ports are to be governed, managed, and processes and procedures within the port are delivered. And these are the Port Good Governance Guidance, the Ports and Marine Facilities Safety Code, the Guide to Good Practice on Port and Marine Operations. So what that gives you is how you should oversee, and this is really targeted at the duty holders, how you should be questioning, teasing the governance of the harbour. The Ports and Marine Facilities Safety Code is there to give a framework in the way that the harbour is managed, and then the Guide to Good Practice is, if you like, the procedures to deliver on all that. And I think over the last 25 years or so, the documentation has stood the test of time, and it's been live documentation, such that in 2025, the Ports and Marine Facilities Safety Code was revisited and republished. For those of you who've been around the business for a while will recognise that it used to be the Port and Marine Safety Code. Facilities is one of the fundamental changes that has come into the 2025 edition, and I'll come into that in a little bit more detail a little later on. But the one thing that I would say about the 2025 edition is that the tone is stronger. There's a bit more focus to it, and there is a little bit of scope change, where previously it just talked about navigation safety. Now it talks about navigation safety, and it also talks about marine safety. and I'll touch on that again a little later on in the briefing. In the minister's forward, there is one sentence which struck home to most of us in the industry. We must improve. And, you know, there's lots of wringing of hands and hearts, you know, who's at fault? Who has triggered this comment? Well, actually, you know, there's no one thing, but collectively as an industry, there are still too many slips, trips and falls. There's still too many people falling into harbours. There's still too many people falling off gangways. So it's a wider thing. So I wouldn't get too focused on it, other than the fact that at the higher level, which is the DFT and underneath, of course, the MCA, there is a drive to improve. And I'll come on to a bit more of that as well. The 2025 edition also talks about the duty holder, yourselves, and has raised the profile of the duty holder as well, because in some of the audits around the country, it's been found that the duty holder has been detached from the operations of the harbour, and there have been problems therein. The fact that I'm sitting here talking to you suggests that you don't have that problem. Marine facilities. The previous edition did actually reflect on facilities, but this edition now really focuses on facilities, because in practice, that's where a lot of the slips, trips, falls, the accidents have happened. It's not the harbour authority's issue per se, but it's been facilities within a harbour authority area, whether that's, you know, off the top of my head, the Sea Scouts or a rowing club or something like that. But that's where a lot of the issues have been, and not quite pertinent to this, but you may or may not remember last year, the four or five paddle boarders died in an accident on one of the rivers. Yeah, and what was found there, that there was a fundamental failing of the owner, the duty holder, and understanding what was happening further down the line, and ultimately the duty holder there, she's paid for it by going to prison, but that's because they didn't have basic processes in place, like a risk assessment. Bridging documents is another new thing, which is formalising relationships between the Harbour Authority and those facilities in and around the Harbour Authority. And I've touched on that as well. Competence is something that's now come to the top of the MCA's focus list. Back in the day, there'd be crusty old souls who would come in from sea, would go into the harbour industry at all sorts of levels. So the harbour industry had a source of experienced, relatively capable people coming into it. And as our merchant marine has declined over the years, it's not as dramatic as it sounds, but the numbers of people who are coming ashore have declined. Therefore, those people coming ashore with experience of handling ropes, of, you know, standing at the end of a breakwater, sniffing the wind and knowing that, you know, we're in for a bad spell of bad weather or whatever, that's faded away. So competency is something that has been focused on. This year, there is a compliance reporting exercise, which has already been initiated by the MCA. I'll come on to that a little later on, but it just goes to show that there is altogether more focus by the DFT and the MCA. And indeed, one of my other ports is getting a health check next week by the MCA. And this has almost been unheard of in the last couple of years, because they've just been doing their own sweet thing, frankly. But the direction is get on with your job. So what have I done over the last year or so? I had a full handover from David Foster, and then I had a full day's visit to the Isle of Wight. I visited Ventnor, Newport. We did some time at sea, met the team, and really started to understand your team as a whole. The audit was 2 full days, which saw site visits, a river trip, full briefings and discussions. Some some of it a bit informal, some of it wandering around, some of it kicking the tires, some of it going through the paperwork and actually ticking boxes and yes, no's and all that sort of good stuff. I talked about sustainable compliance, and that means routine engagement. So once a month, the three of us get together, spend an hour or so talking about the monthly report, what has happened, what hasn't happened. And because I've got a wider view of what's happening in the industry, I think I add a bit of value by saying what I'm seeing in other ports around the country. It doesn't sound a lot, but what it is enough for me as your designated person to, as I say, look you straight in the eye and give you a bit of confidence that things are really found. Just moving on to the audit, and you don't need to understand the detail of that other than the fact that there's no red in there. The green is good. The yellow is opportunities for improvement. Now, these are opportunities for improvement as I see them. It's up to the Harbour team to decide whether you're going to take that forward or not. And, you know, it's not for me to say yes, yes, and say no and hell no. But as long as there's some sort of internal discussion and a conclusion, that's absolutely fine. What I'll do very quickly is talk about what I should have said, beg your pardon. If you've got questions as I go through, very much stop me and buy one, because, you know, we can deal with them at a time. Beg your pardon.
It's fine. I do have a question, but I will hold it till the end because you might answer it as you go.
Okay,
But just to preempt you, I have got questions.
okay, that's fine.
Quickly, just welcome Councillor Price and Councillor Bill Nye online as well. Just wanted-
Oh, beg your
I
pardon.
realised we had an online.
Hope you don't mind me having my back to you, councillor.
Apologies, Chairman.
Sorry.
It's on mute. Okay, so I just talk about the audit in brief, and what I'll do is brief in the format of the Port Marines Facility Safety Code, where there are 10 sections, and each heading reflects that section. So the first one is the duty holder, and I hadn't really realised this until I looked at it on the ferry across. It says D.H. Lawrence. This is not David Herbert Lawrence, the duty holder and Lawrence. And as you know, whilst I have a ready and easy communication with Jono, it's important that I can talk to, and the duty holder can talk to me, and Lawrence and I have, it's for Lawrence to say, but easy and comfortable discussion over the issues that are going on in and around the port. The 2025 code emphasises the role of the duty holder, and I mentioned that beforehand. And to say, you know, you're comfortable. Well, I'm comfortable with all this. But what I would remind people is that training is not only recommended, but it's kind of required these days. You know, it's one of those things. Whilst it is a code, again, it goes back to the minister's forward. You know, it is kind of a code, but actually, if you don't follow the code, which is considered good best practice, you know, you could be prosecuted under the Health and Safety at Work Act, and it's actually quite blunt in the document. But duty holder training is recommended, and in any health check, the MCA will look for that to be completed. Moving on to legislation, your team understand the underpinning legislation to which you work, and that's absolutely fine. Then we get into the guidance of the good governance and the code and all the rest of it. The Marine Safety Management System, I'll come on to that a bit later, but it's a document which covers everything, but I would suggest it needs a little bit of refining to make it probably altogether a bit more user friendly. And it's not something that anybody would expect the duty holder to get into, but you've got to be confident that the Marine Safety Management System is actually working. And it is working, but it could be a little bit smoother. And that's all that is continuous improvement, which again is a tenet of the code. I talk about the consultation policy. There is, some of the policies are in the safety management system, but the consultation policy is something that I'd suggest is brought to the fore because stakeholder engagement is now key to delivering on the code. That said, I don't think it's a particular problem for Newport Ventnor, because what I've seen is routine engagements, routine stakeholder engagement as issues come up and as issues are dealt with. Moving on to duties and powers. COWS is the competent harbour authority. That's the pilotage authority, whereas Newport doesn't have those powers. The one thing that I would suggest is that, and we've discussed this at length, and I don't think there's an issue particularly here, is that there is some sort of understanding between COWS and Newport, such that you've got the assurance of what comes into your waters under pilotage has got your, for want of a better word, blessing on it. You know, because if you're not careful, you can have a situation where it's, you know, trust me, I'm British and I used to work for the government. Well, yeah, fine, but actually, what you need is some documented assurance that the person that's gone through the pilotage or the pilotage exemption certificate in COWS is actually competent to navigate in your waters. And we've discussed this, and I don't see that as a particular issue either. Risk assessment. The full harbour risk assessment was done in 2019, and that's fine. But I would suggest that you know, the principles of risk assessments, health and safety work ethic, all that good stuff, you know, after about 5 years or so, should be reviewed. I don't think that it needs a complete overhaul, but it's certainly does need to be reviewed, such that, you know, you are again comfortable and confident that work that was done 6 or 7 years ago is still valid today. In practice, as I say, I think it needs a review rather than a revisit, and we can talk about this again when you're ready, Lawrence. I made the distinction between navigation safety and marine safety, and you could argue that the slipway is not part of navigation safety, but I would suggest it is part of marine safety. What you've got is a slipway which was designed and built in 1800, whenever it was, and of course, you know, now we're in the 2000s. It doesn't actually meet the current design standards for slips. Again, nobody's going to hold that against any harbour, because it is what it is. And in practice, what we've already seen, the MCA, DFT, and a number of other agencies haven't been forcing harbours to change their infrastructure, particularly because something was built in 1850 or whatever. But what I would suggest is that the signage, the warnings, and all the rest of it are increased, such that you, the council, are seen to be exercising your duty of care in warning people of the specific hazards, which might not be particularly obvious to even a reasonably experienced boater. Again, we've discussed this, and John and I were talking about this a little earlier on, and due progress has been made there.
Excuse me, which slipway are you referring to?
What do you call it?
It's the Newport one, so by Jubilee Stores.
Yeah.
Also, there's a bit.
Oh, okay, that one down there.
So steep.
Yeah.
Not
I was
fine.
thinking of the one. I was thinking the one up the historic one up by C Street.
Yeah, I know that one's even worse than the other one.
That's why it was in my head. But that's historic. Feature, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. And you know, there's sorry.
And the folly, I take it that one's well within its safety features, because that's not steep as the other two, is it?
No.
That comes.
I mean, the only
under
site
air, even though it was built by the club itself, if it serves me correctly.
So how long ago was it built?
the 80s.
Time.
It was built in the 80s, I believe.
Yeah.
The only slight problem with that is that it goes down and then goes back up again.
With a hump.
If you park on the hump, the tide can go round you. But
Not only perfect.
I've seen a lovely motorboat hit. And a few swear words afterwards from the captain who was downstairs letting his
A little bit more.
from his wife from driving the motorboat. That's where the pole is and
Yeah.
the fire bucket upside down.
Oh, I know the one, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was sitting on my boat.
Which is ideal for tenders and sort of handheld stuff. It's not great for vehicles.
The mitigation here is just is improve signage.
Yeah.
Don't let your wife try.
Pretty much, pretty much. You know, I mean, you just, again, you know, without repeating it, you know, there's an awful lot of infrastructure around the country. There's an acceptance that it is what it is. But how do you mitigate that? And more often than not, the mitigation is by informing, by warning, by guiding, because nobody's going to expect you to lift and shift a slipway.
There's lots of that style of slipway all over the council have responsibility for. Isn't there? There's a couple in our harbours, but there's lots of them along the seafront.
Oh, yeah, they're all over the damn shop.
I think the one I put the Folly as well is a little bit different, John, and it's the fact of the ownership of that one as well is a little bit disputed.
And it's not a public slipway, it's a council slipway, so it can't be public because it's through a private
Slap
road,
aside on
nothing
it.
else, so.
As you are now distracted, I will ask my question.
Okay.
It's okay. So having gone through the report, just before the risk assessment part, it does say that there's no security procedures in place for international visitors processed through cows. As we know, a few years ago, there was a few people who actually went into the harbour at East Cowes and were basically charging migrants to come across and let them off there. Not the best sense really when they were letting them off outside the security cameras on a place that is really got lots of security cameras because of the value of the boats there. My concern would be that there is nothing, or as far as I'm aware, to stop that going further down the channel and down to the Folly. And now we see it here in writing that there are no security procedures in place for international visitors processed through cows. What will we be doing as a council to try and mitigate that?
And again, this goes back to relationship with cows, because I think, you know, what I said, no security procedures are in place, but what you can do, I would suggest, is piggyback off cows and have some sort of arrangement with them that they, for want of a better word, protect you by delivering on that due process that is required.
I think also, and this is more about the bit that Ian was mentioning there is about pilotage, which is actually bringing larger vessels through your water safely. This isn't about what they're carrying or anything like that. It's about we only have one vessel come into our jurisdiction that needs pilotage.
Yeah.
So then that's the Blade Runner which comes up. That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas cows have a lot. As far as illegal migrants and bits like that coming in, that wasn't really what.
Well, that's fine.
That's
It
an
is
subject.
because it's mentioned in the report.
Right, okay.
Mentioned it.
So, right, okay, and I remember that now. This comes under what is known as the ISPS code, which is the International Security for Port Facilities and all the rest of it. So that is a very specific again code, but it's actually in UK law now for mainly cargoes, mainly of foreign flagged vessels.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, you don't have those in Newport, but you might. Therefore, you know, what I'm suggesting, you should have some sort of relationship there. That's all. Okay. In terms of security and legal immigrants and all that sort of good stuff, frankly, you know, I defer to the Border Force for direction on that one. And if you want some information, one of my harbours is right at the forefront of illegal immigrants, and I can pull some stuff out there for you if you like.
Just quickly stating, we now got, we have CCTV, so the cameras are on the pontoons, so we can see if the same boat turns up for 20 minutes and unloads 6 people.
That's the bit that I wanted to know. Do we have cameras and stuff? I do hasten to add, I'm not doing it because I don't think people should be brought in. What I do think is if they are being charged a fortune to do it, then there should be some resulting that you haven't just been chucked off a boat and left on the Isle of Wight with nothing.
Those CCTV cameras came out of a discussion at one of these previous meetings.
Okay,
So one of the members suggested it and we've done it.
Yeah, and also we're quite lucky with the tidal access is that they can't arrive at sort of hours because when there's no tide, they can't come in. So we've got set times, which sort of helps. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. I mean, this is part and parcel of it, making sure that you're comfortable that your team is delivering.
Thank you.
Moving on to marine safety management system. So the marine safety management, there's a couple of parts to this. The current documentation suite is complete and is therefore compliant. But what I've done is made a couple of recommendations that it's not quite cut and pasting, but a little bit of reordering, a little bit of some presentational changes will make it a more friendly user document. And this is important because my job is to tell you whether the marine safety management system is being worked properly. It is being worked properly. I think it could be a little bit smoother. And I know both Lawrence and Jono are on the case there. And as I say, I'm happy to support with that. The marine safety management system is not in the sole purview of the harbour master. It should be to the wider community because that's what the wider boating community, because that's what they've got to work to. Auditing and reviewing now. There is a requirement in the code for regular audits, for regular reviews, but there's nothing particularly dramatic about this. This is the way that we work in this day and age, because everything we do is risk assessed. Everything that we do needs to be reviewed in the fullness of time. The bridging document is, as I touched on earlier on, is new to the 2025 edition of the code. And this just joins up facilities within the Harbour Authority. Forewarned, Newport, you're very well ahead of the process on this one and working with cows quite neatly and I think quite successfully. Competence I've touched on, where you have a training matrix, but what I've recommended is that there's a bit more to it in that there's a little more clarity on how you get to that trained qualification. And as a council, I can pretty be sure that you have due process that just works through for all your employees. And I think this just needs to be brought into the marine safety management system of, if you like, your marine employees and how they get to their qualification. And whether it's an internal qualification or whether it's an external qualification, it doesn't really matter. It's just that you've got a process to hire a person to get them through their induction and all the rest of it, to be standing on the side, on the quay side, they're throwing a rope or catching a rope or something like that. Keeping it simple. I say keeping it simple. So one thing I should have brought out right at the very beginning with the 2025 edition of the code, it makes a point about proportionality. So the code is there for Southampton, Port of London and all the rest of it, and they all work to this as well. But there is a recognition that these things have got to be proportional. And in regard to good practice, it actually makes mention of municipal ports. Municipal ports are the ones that tend to struggle a little bit in resource, whether that's in cash, whether it's in people, whether that's in all the rest of it. So, everything's got to be kept in proportion here. Plan. What I would suggest is teased out a bit more within the documentation that you have is a marine safety plan. And the marine safety plan tends to be 3 to 5 years, excuse me, just looking ahead as to what you want to happen in and around your port. Marine Safety Plan is quite a good document if it's used properly, because that becomes the document whereby you measure the, other than financial, of course, how you measure the success or the activity within the port. Rather than you flogging through the Marine Safety Management System at your routine meetings, you've got the Marine Safety Plan, which I've seen ones which have got 200 pages in it. I've seen ones which have got 5 pages in it, but it's the headlines of what you want to happen within your port. So it's you as the duty holder, and periodically, you know, have we achieved this date? Have we achieved this date? And you can get a sense straight away of what I'm sure you're all looking for, is that continuous improvement. As I say, you have the documentation. I would suggest it's teased out a little bit to make it easier for you. Conservancy is the final part of this. And again, you know, looking at proportionality, you know, it says there, yet it lacks a specific passage plan. The code requires a passage plan, but actually, you know, bring the proportionality to this. With the size of Newport, with the size of Ventnor, is it worth having a specific passage plan? Because the highest legislation talks about birth-to-birth plans and all the rest of it. You know, let's get real. Let's get proportionate about this. You probably don't need a passage plan, but what we can talk about in the risk assessment is, you know, a conclusion whether you do or do not need a passage plan. And then that shows a very deliberate process in getting to where you've got to. And, you know, it might in time prove to be right or prove to be wrong. But you as the council, you as the duty holder with your team, can justify what you've said and done. I had a little swipe at the Solent Handbook and Directory, because clearly they've set themselves up as, none of you are publishers on that one, but they've offered a whole lot of advice for which is wrong. And the final point there is procedures for non-commercial users to be developed, and that's already in hand. So getting to a conclusion, the key findings of the audit, as I said earlier on, there's no red there. So Newport and Ventnor are compliant with the code. There are opportunities for development, yet no non-conformities. And the two areas which I think really need to be looked at, and I know have already been started, is refining the documentation and the review of the navigation risk assessment. So in summary, the summary of compliance, just hang on to the next slide. Thank you. As I came into the job as your designated person, I've gone over the previous annual report and the previous audit reports, and the recommendations one way or another have all been followed up. I think your compliance is sustainable, and what I have found in working with your team, that there's a culture of transparency, and there's and the continuous improvement is evident. So, you know, to conclude, Newport and Ventnor are compliant with the code, and I recommend that you report compliance to the MCA. Now that the compliance requirement has been published, and I'll send you the documentation. Oh, you've got it. Well done. So, you know, I'm very comfortable. The one very final point I'd like to say, Chair, is that I've thoroughly enjoyed working with your team and working in Newport and Ventnor over the last year. So thank you very much.
Great, no, thank you, Ian, thank you for that.
Happy to take questions.
Just got one question. I think it's to do with the duty holder, are the new duties, the changes. And it's through that we ensure appropriate resources are made available for marine safety obligations. I just request to officers really, do we feel we do have resources available in order to do that, given external pressures?
My view would be presently, in terms of Newport, yes. In terms of Ventnor, and you'll see from when we did the finance report, there have been some concerns about lack of resources available to do the licenses for removal of seaweed. But we have dealt with that, but it is an overspend. Got to do it, have no choice. So there's been a concern about that, I think, for a number of years, the cost of that as well. Other than that, I'm not sure whether Lawrence and Ron have got any further comments, but generally, yeah, it's fine.
Thank you very much. So we're going to move on. I want to ask you a question. Sorry. Yes, Ray.
I noticed on your graph that the risk assessment for fire has got no, just one bar on its own recommending improvement. And in East Cowes there was that boat caught fire, and at the time I was on.
So Ray, can you
Cowes.
speak up a bit?
Sorry.
Here up here.
Oh, we haven't got the little thing either. have
I know we haven't got your microphones. Yeah.
we? All right. So does that mean the public can't hear what I'm saying?
Don't know. Carry on.
In East Cowes Marina, there was a boat that caught fire at one stage, and there was a lot of food around that. And at the time, I was working with my friend, Sir Albert, in Cowes Harbour Commission advisory body, and it come to light that it was willfully. I don't know what's the word, willfully. There was gaps in the way that we dealt with that particular incident. And since then we've had another fire, did we not? In our own section of the river, which we were fortunate that we cut it loose, sink it, did we not? I'm sorry, I'm just
of trying to put the fire out did sink the boat, which then was out.
But I'm just wondering, because I've noticed on your graph there, have we moved forward in how we monitor and how we deal with fires? Because I remember East Cowes Harbour Commission were pretty reliant on Southampton as part of the fire risk assessment, in them shooting across and giving us a hand to put things out. The land-based fire department was inadequate at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Heavily reliant on small dinghies to get to these things.
I mean, the plus side is now we've got the general directions, which also say no barbecues on backs of boats and stuff, which helps reduce the points of ignition. Newport itself isn't too bad because they're all alongside the quay. Access is quite easy. Or sorry, easier, I should say.
Yeah.
Folly with its mid-river pontoons are always going to be more difficult. It's sort of trying to reduce it. Cowes are looking at, they are modifying Sea Clear, so it's got large pumps on board.
Right.
So it's sort of work in progress.
Okay.
But there are a lot of mid-river pontoons in Cowes and Medina in full. So it is something that's looking into. It's always a difficult one because trying to put boats out once the glass fibers ignites is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And you've got to be very brave to say the glass is on fire, it won't go out, sink it, because then it's suddenly, my boat was fine, it would have gone out, but then you sank it. So
Yeah, someone's got.
they are always,
Yeah.
it's a difficult thing to have as a set rule.
There's an understanding of primacy in this, because in a fire, the emergency service, which is the fire department, has primacy.
Right.
So to a lesser or greater extent, that's when the harbour master becomes an advisor to however they're going to do their business. If the local fire department is distant from boat fires, and I've had experience in the harbour master's job, I got to know the fire department chief, and we started fire drills with the fire department, and all of a sudden then the two things happened. The boaters became altogether more aware because they could see things happening. The boaters became more confident, But actually, is the fire service became more confident because they started understanding boats.
Yeah.
They started understanding that actually most boats, quite a lot of boats, have a gas bottle on board, for example,
Yeah.
and so on, so on, so. So I'd recommend, you know, a discussion, even if it gets down to basic levels. What is a boat? And not for this meeting, but I can tell you quite a dramatic story about a fire in a boat that wasn't. But the training that was done thereafter saw everybody more confident and comfortable in what was happening on their patch.
Yeah, especially for the firemen themselves, because they're walking onto a vessel that has got potential explosives.
I think we need to move on now. If that's
All right, sorry.
We have got another. We've got quite a few reports to get through, and
Okay.
the 3 already. No, it's not very interesting. It's what always happens that we all love hearing about this, and
Lots more stories if you want.
maybe not for today.
Okay.
So going to move on to item 6 now, which is again over to you, Ian.
No, it was actually mine.
Oh, George, sorry,
It's more about
sorry, Lawrence.
Ian mentioned at the end of it about us having to self-report our
Yes.
compliance. Well, that's we have to do that online now, which Ian's kindly provided us all of the links previously, but we have had to upload a letter just from the duty holder just to say that we're compliant, and that's really is just for information. What I'll probably need to do, if you don't mind, is ask you to sign that afterwards.
So is that the
Yeah,
audit reports,
it's the
or
it's
the statement of compliance?
statement of compliance.
Oh yeah, sorry, we've still got item 6 to go.
I think Ian covered that in his.
All in one.
I think so,
With
yeah.
5 and 6 together. We've
Yeah.
got 2
Yeah.
separate. Okay, just I'm checking on that. Thank you. Yeah, that's no problem, Lawrence. I can sign that. Do you want me to sign that now, or you send it over?
And that's right, I send it.
Yeah.
We have to, I think we have a month's window in January the 5th or something to report our compliance. So it's just open now for us to be able to log on and do it. So
Great. So Ian, you've completely finished speaking to us now, and there's no more questions, I think, from the committee. So
Okay, yep, certainly.
thank you so much. It's good
Pleasure on floor.
getting on well with the team. Enjoy our harbours. Oh, please stay for the meeting. I was just double checking that you said everything you need to say.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a big trip for you to come down. Appreciate that. And
Yeah, no, that's fine. Good job.
acknowledge why you're
Do
here.
it.
I wasn't dismissing you. But
Some-
however, no.
Yeah, it's cold outside waiting for me to give you a lift back.
Right then, so we've got our financial reports now, which we did touch on briefly. Alex, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a standard item on the agenda to have a look at the financial reports at well, every meeting that we have. There's not a lot to talk about. They are supplied as part of the meeting notes. If we can tackle Newport first, what you'll notice, I think, from Newport is that we are, in terms of expenditure, pretty much on budget on almost every item, with the exception of employees, where we are slightly forecasting under budget to the tune of £5,484. Not a huge amount in the great scheme of the staffing budget. So we are in the good in terms of expenditure, because we're 6,500-ish under budget currently. And on the expenditure, unusually, normally we have a few variations in terms of variations against the forecast. What you'll notice there is a series of zeros in that column all the way down, apart from £95 at the bottom. So what that's telling us is that we are pretty much on budget or on forecast for every single item on that line.
Amazing.
So I think that's because the forecasting's got better. And things are beginning to settle a little bit after COVID and all the other issues that we've had. But what that shows at the minute is the forecasted position as at the end of the financial year would be 6,500 in the good. So pretty much budget. There's no real surprises within Newport.
Which shows it's very good control as well, and understanding of what needs to happen.
We've done a lot of work on that.
Excellent.
We've done a lot of work on that budget to try and get the budget so that it's accurate. I think in the past you've seen, some lines are up, some lines are down. It's been all over the place, but it is beginning to settle, I think, quite nicely and hit the target.
Congratulations, I think we're in order. Cool.
Thank you. I'll perhaps take any questions or move on to Ventnor. Not too much to question, but more than happy to take questions. No.
So,
Ventnor's a slight-
pleased.
Ventnor's a slightly different story, very simplistic budget in Ventnor because it's a much, much smaller harbour. The area that I highlighted is the one area that probably does need to be highlighted, and it's the £12,000 variance under contractor services. Everything else is pretty much on budget. That is an overspend of £12,000 on contracted services because there's insufficient budget there to meet the requirements of applying for the dredging and disposal licenses, which Lawrence has had to do to achieve that. So I think that's cost us in the region of about 10 or 11,000, I think, this year, hasn't it? And we are going through that process at the minute. And so we're in the consultation phase for the dredging license, and hopefully that's 28 days, Lawrence, I think you informed me this morning, and that ends toward the end of January. Hopefully the MCA will approve that dredging license, and then I've had to commission a piece of work about the disposal license as well, which we've just got the report back on, which has been done by consultants Royal Haskiny and has cost us quite a bit of money, as they always do. And it's a specialist piece of work. We have to do these things to make sure that we achieve the dredging that we need to do in Ventnor Harbour. This isn't a cost that we necessarily get every year. It's
5 years, the licenses.
So it's a cost that's going to occur, but it's not planned into the budgets. And so it is a bit, as I said earlier, Julie, in terms of any concerns we have, that is a bit of concern because every 5 years we will have that issue. And so it either needs to be done as a separate capital or it needs to be factored into the budgets in some way. It's always tricky when it's not an annual cost, though, isn't it? It's how you reflect that in your budgets.
It's a perennial issue with the seaweed, isn't it?
Yeah. We all know this situation. I think people will all remember when they have had problems with dredging in the past, a bit before our time managing at Harbour. The smell that emanates from that area not being dredged, huge impact on local businesses. It's really important to Harbour dredged. There were some health and safety issues with the sulfur dioxide that came off of the seaweed when it was removed properly.
Right, well, yes.
I don't confess to be an expert at but it has been a problem, and I think we pretty much overcome that problem. But it is an ongoing thing.
Are we going to recover this position then in the next couple of years? Are we cover?
Well, the additional is only there'll probably be another couple of £1,000 onto that because dependent on the results from the Royal Haskiny report, we'll have to apply for another licence, which will probably be a couple of £1,000. But you only get this every 5 years. When the licences are granted, you get 5 years on them. No, it won't be a problem next year for it.
Any questions for committee? Lovely, thank you very much, Alex. So now we've got
Afternoon all. So for Newport Harbour, the quarterly report from September to the end of November. Our visitors numbers are going very well. We've done 1,600 visitors at Newport. Obviously, it's dropping away now. Give you an idea, in December we had the total of 4 overnight stays. So I mean, very brave of them, but
Yeah, I'd say.
it will be roughly about that now. Our pontoons at the Folly, we're managing to fill a good chunk of them. We've got 1 or 2 that are available, but that's usually because they've just given them up and we've got people that want them, but not quite yet. Events at the Harbour. Obviously, we had the Classic Car Show in September that worked very well. We also had the multi-agency taxi vehicle inspections that were down there for 2 weeks. The people that attended that didn't look overly pleased, but I think it was very successful for them. Also, you probably noticed that we've got MCM have started work down on the quay. So they started that sort of October. Sorry, I can't find my note. And they're sort of ongoing, and it's amazing what they can manage to do and how much it's changing, which is great.
Sorry, just some information that was from the monies that we got for capital allocation a few years ago for the second phase of the Harbour Walls works. I think you probably remember 2019, 2020, we did phase 1 bits. This was the phase 2 parts of the original Harbour Walls condition survey that we had. So they're working MCM with a successful contractor appointed. and they're part way through. The only hold up we've got at the moment, and we've had some discussions myself and Ian with regards to some of the statutory bodies and having to apply for certain permits for things. We're waiting for some Environment Agency reports, Environment Agency licenses to come back to complete some of the works, and they've taken 3 months so far. So we're a little bit behind on the works, but that's all progressing quite well, John, on this.
That will impact the budget. I mean,
No,
Open
not
them up,
really,
isn't
a little bit, because just to silly things, we had an agreement with the RCP parking people to use 3 of their spaces, and they gave us a price for 3 months to do the works.
Yeah.
Well, we've been renting that, and we can't do the works because the Environment Agency haven't granted the licenses for us. So a little bit like that, but nothing too much. Obviously, it's going to affect MCM's programming
That's what I was
because they've built it into their program, so it might overrun slightly.
yeah.
But they have had other bits of work they can get on with. But they'll get to a point, if we don't hurry it, they've assured us, the EA, that they're going to issue the licenses by the end of next week.
Okay.
So hopefully, fingers crossed, we should be able to.
If that update's really
Periodic, stuff we've checked throughout the quarter, everything all seems to be in place. We had to do a little bit of gardening around our transit lights as the trees got a bit too close, so we had to get them cut, trimmed, so then they're now visible. Most things have all as they should be. The slipways have been cleaned monthly to reduce that. As I mentioned before, we've now got CCTV around our Harbour office, which also includes the visitors pontoon. Other than that, most things have gone well. The Harbour staff have had to pump out numerous boats at the folly, but that's always the standard thing. Other than that, and obviously we've had to put salt down and grit down where it's been getting rather cold to stop slip and slides. But other than that, it's all been so far so good, and hopefully the season will start again and people will start coming again. But happy for any questions.
Any questions from anybody? No? Okay, great. Oh,
Curiosity.
Oh, you're lucky there, Ray.
It's a silly question. Like you got nowhere with Green King with the plans of joining the pond. I didn't think you would be. No.
Sadly, not at the moment, but I think having visitors pontoons on both channel sides of West A and East A seems to work quite well. And the permanent berths on the shore side of West A seem to have been taken up very nicely. In fact, we have no space on that pontoon, so seems to be working well.
I think
That idea is going to be sort of pushed to one side for a while.
we haven't got the money now anyway. I think
Yes, I was thinking.
one of the bits of capital they took back, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Because we hadn't spent it.
It's kind of something that we can only say, but you need them to like the idea as well.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Ventnor now, please, Jonathan.
Yep. Ventnor is going well.
Busy, look.
Reasonably so. So they've got 7 permanent moorings now, which is an increase of sort of 2 or 3 than they've had in past years. Having the Versadoc pontoon systems that they fitted this year have allowed more boats, and also the boats that are in there, how do I put it, weather the storms better. But other than that, nothing really has happened, which is a good thing. No major incidents or problems. Their pumping of the seaweed has gone very well. They've sort of in November they did nearly 140 hours. But it's the number of hours that they pump is dependent on the amount of seaweed they get that month, if that makes sense. The other thing is that they have been suffering with sort of, because of the good weather during the summer, the seaweed grew reasonably well. And then with the big storms, it all gets released. So instead of having a steady flow of seaweed coming in, they can get 100 tons on a tide. And obviously the pump can't cope with that. So, but they are keeping on top of it, which is great.
I'm sure everybody else knows the answer to this, but I don't. It says in the end of the report, a disposal licence is desperately needed for that to be able to sustainably manage the haven. That's actually mentioned in the last paragraph.
Yeah, so there is two of the dredging licence, one that Lawrence touched on earlier. There is the licence for the current operation, which is to use the pump to pump it out as it comes in. And then there is a mechanical dredge, so bring diggers in. And that will be a separate licence for disposal. So that would be another licence we will need to start to look into getting.
Now, have we done the financial balance of it saying here, the cheapest way would basically to use the diggers, but we need the licence. So has that little exercise been done saying that we can buy the licence because it's cheaper to do
Well,
it?
the thing is the management or the operational management of the harbour is contracted out, so it's a contractor that does it.
Yeah.
So they are liable for they pay for any dredge that it is. The last dredge we did mechanical wise cost about £15,000 because we had to deposit the excess that came out of the harbour a couple of miles down the coast.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think they would, if we had both licenses in place, they're still going to need the normal license with the pump.
Yeah.
But it's when they get these big occasions, we can just get stuck in there. They can dig it out, and there's not a lot of cost to move it 150 meters along the beach and dump it. But that's what we need the application for. So what it will do if we get a disposal license to do that method, it will make the harbour more cost effective going forward.
So my next question will be are we going to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was what Alex had said earlier.
Yeah,
with
we've
regards
done that.
We're in the process of trying to get professional advice as to where we can dispose it, because any time you dispose below the high water mark, you have to have a license. So it's a case of finding somewhere where we can dispose below the low water mark, and that's what that consultant's report is hopefully going to give us.
Because the license is not just for disposal, it's also how you dispose it. So because it's two different processes of one's a digger and one's a pump, it's easy to have them in separate licenses.
With our current licenses in place, we've got permission to dredge the harbour. We haven't got permission to dispose of the sediment we take out of it. We can dig as much as we want up. We can't put it anywhere. So that, hence the reason.
Yes.
Well, it is we can dispose of it to land, or we can dispose of it above the high water mark. But as far as putting it just back down the coast, so it will just run down with the tides.
It's the transport
To-
costs.
The transport costs are expensive.
Making sure that it doesn't tidally become the bay's problem. Chuck it from Ventnor and let it wash
Yeah,
out.
I think the last bit of work we did, it went down to Monk's Bay, that is desperate for sand. So it was good quality sand that was coming out of the harbour. So it actually did the council a favour because it was more sand going onto the beach.
And it was above the high water mark.
They just levelled it all
So
out.
it was,
Thank you.
Any further questions on that report? No? Oh, thank you very much for those very comprehensive.
Can I just ask one last question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Claire. Yeah.
Sorry. Because my head and my life revolves around what can I make money out of? Yours does too, doesn't it? And it's not being a counsellor. When you do this, in my head, sorry, when you do this with the sand, there are so many opportunities for sand to be used across the island. Why don't we as a council say we are programming in that we are going to have this amount of sand we calculate that can be gone? Who would be interested in taking it? Because I could think off the top of my head sand schools and stuff like that would absolutely love that, and they knew that the council wanted to dispose of it. We've then got areas that it can go to. Just wondering if anybody had ever looked into that.
We have had conversations in the past about seaweed and sand and any disposals from any of the harbours. And sometimes we can get, sometimes the seaweed, depending on the type of seaweed it is, will be taken by farmers.
Yep.
Not very often that, because the quality of the seaweed isn't what they need.
Yep.
The sand is a slightly different issue because it's
Needs
not just,
cleaning,
it's
doesn't
not
it?
just sand. It's got so many other factors in it that most people wouldn't want it. We had some discussions with one of the sand and gravel companies.
Yep.
A couple of years ago, which in fact, I think Sean Newton did that when he was here.
Yeah.
And there are options for that, but I don't think they wanted the quality of
Yeah, we had a
Stuff that we
presentation,
did at
we
the
had a
harbour.
presentation at the committee. I'm
They might,
sure, yeah.
on the stuff we sweep off the beaches, sometimes like in Ryde, they might want.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're along the right lines.
Thank you.
Ready to make-
Right, okay, we haven't got any questions from members, have we? So
None submitted.
I draw this meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ian.
Go for
Well done, guys.
Thank you very much.
it.